Well, hello guys, and welcome to the Rusty Beauties garage. Today, in our focus is finally this Rusty Beauty behind me, the 1970 TR6. We're not gonna talk about the story of this car anymore. There's two episodes in which I explain how I've done a lot of work on this car years ago, and then the restoration stalled, but now the car is back to me and we're gonna finish it. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I'm gonna put a link here and you can go and watch the quick recap of the first 28 or 21 episodes. Now we are in a new stage in this restoration, which is we have to put it back together after it's been painted. I haven't done the paint, it's been done in a different shop. It is a decent paint job. It's not fantastic, there are some flaws, but they're gonna be fixed later again by this paint shop or I don't know where, but the paint job is not our responsibility. It's our responsibility to keep it safe, of course. The first question that comes in mind when you start working on a car that has been painted and now you have to put it back together is, where do I start? Well, I'll tell you where. Well, first of all, let's make sure that all the fenders and all the gaps and doors and everything is in place, because what the idea about paint with this car was, there's two schools. Like Chef Tash, for example, prefers to paint everything separately. Of course, before the paint, he makes sure that the gaps are good, but then he takes everything apart and paints interior and exterior of all the panels, and then he puts them back together after the paint, and they stay permanently. That's of course the better option, because you make sure that you paint inside everywhere. But for me, that's really scary, because I don't want to deal with panels that are painted and put them on and off and align them, and you know, there's a big risk to scratch the paint. So that's why we chose a different option for this car. After all the metal work was done, and again, while I was doing the metal work, I aligned all the gaps and doors and everything 1,000 times. When I made sure that everything as metal work was done, we took the body on with the panels, of course, but separately. So they painted the inside of the body, the cockpit, underneath the wheel wells, the inside of the fenders, the inside of the bonnet and the boot lid. So basically all the interior, but they didn't paint the exterior. In the meantime, we had the frame and the suspension rebuilt. We had the engine put on the frame, we had the transmission and everything. So once it was painted inside, it came back to us and we put the body on the frame now permanently with all the body mounts and everything. I put all the fenders again, the doors, and made sure that all the gaps were perfect. And now the car went back to the paint shop and they were supposed to paint the exterior. And that was it. Nothing was supposed to be done after the paint. Everything was supposed to be where it was put before the paint. However, for whatever reason, they took the front fenders and the bonnet off the car, and I believe the doors. I wasn't there, I don't know what they did, but based on what I see here, I think they didn't remove the rear fenders, but the front fenders came off, and the bonnet and the doors, because everything is misaligned now. For example, what I'm talking about is, you see this gap here. First of all, the bonnet is sticking too far out here. This gap is big here, small here. Then again, big here, small there. The door is too far forward here, has a bigger gap in the back. Normally, it's the opposite on TR6, because this gap can be smaller, but this one needs to be bigger, because now when you open the door, this almost touches here. Let me see if I can do it one-handed here. So you see this almost touches, and you need to have a little bit of tolerance, because as you're driving, things move, and there's big risk of scratching here. So if we move this door a little bit back, we're gonna close this gap. We're gonna give it a little bit of a tolerance here. This end of the door, the bottom end, needs to go in. The bonnet needs to get twisted a little bit, which like literally like this, very little. So this corner goes back in. This gap is gonna remain even. This gap is gonna close. here this gap is very wide, it's going to become narrow there. If we twist it, it will say that we're going to leave this as a pivoting point, this corner, but all the other three corners are going to move. You know what I mean? It's going to pivot here, this is going to go in, that's going to go to the left, and this one is going to go to the left. Then this gap is going to become a little bit smaller there, but it's going to remain bigger here. But here we can move the fender in, I believe. We will see. I'm hoping that we can move it in. Here, this door gap is, again, small at the top, bigger at the bottom. I don't know how we're gonna deal with that, because if we open this a little bit here, the rear end is gonna go down. So maybe, actually, yeah, this body line is off a little bit. Don't pay attention to these things on the paint. So to open this gap, instead of moving the door back, we're actually gonna lift the whole door up to line this up, and we will see about this gap. You see here it is big. Wow, like I'm really upset about that, because I aligned everything myself before it went to paint, and that's how it was supposed to stay. The body has the proper shims everywhere, and everything was supposed to stay as we had it. Why did they remove it? I have no idea. Anyway, so that's the first thing that I'm gonna do. I'm gonna put some air in this tire because it's flat, but it's not totally flat, luckily it's only at the bottom. So we're gonna put some air in it, and we're gonna roll it forward here to have a little bit more access on both sides, and that's gonna be the first job. Align everything, mount the fenders permanently because it's missing some of the hardware here and there, and the doors, and then we're gonna start here with the dash and everything under the dash. All right, so I relocated her a little bit, and now we can walk around everywhere. So let's start with the bonnet. Usually that's where I start when I align doors and fenders and all that. I start always with the bonnet. I try to align the top of the bonnet, or this end of the bonnet, with this scuttle panel, I think it's called, because that's the only panel that doesn't have an adjustment. Everything else, if you adjust this gap, even though you don't have a lot of movement on the fender, you can still play a little bit with it. You can play with the door. So both panels here can move a little bit to align to make this gap perfect. Here is the same. The door and this fender can move a little bit, not a lot, but still you have a little bit of adjustment. But here you can't adjust this panel. It is where it is. So that's why I align the bonnet with that panel, and then I align the fender with the bonnet, and then I try to align the door with the fender, and this fender with the door. Or here we can play with all three panels at the same time. But here we only have one option. So like I said, the bonnet needs to be twisted this way a little bit. So the adjustment is on the hinges, and right here you have these two bolts that mount the hinge to the body, and these three bolts plus this one, which needs to be a short bolt, by the way. You have to be careful, because if it's too long, it's gonna pop out here. Well, looks like they took out these bolts, they didn't take these ones out, so they didn't have a chance to screw up with this one anyway. So now to align it, you can use these two bolts to lift the whole thing up and down. The holes on the hinges are slotted, so it can go up and down, but doesn't have much movement back and forth. Maybe the whole plate can move like that a little bit, it can twist. So we're gonna try with this, and if it doesn't work with these two bolts, then we're gonna have to loosen these and move the bonnet up. We can do that through the grill opening, because now we still don't have the grill. So we're gonna close it, and we're gonna try to adjust it from there. It moved a lot, but we don't want it that much. Maybe like this. That looks pretty even, but here we're still not okay. So we're gonna have to see if we can move the fender very little. Wow, what happened here? It was lining up so well. Okay, I tightened the bolt in this position, and now we're gonna loosen all these. You see, some of them are missing. I don't know why they took them apart. Everything was mounted. Oh, drives me crazy. Anyways, let's loosen these now and see if that's gonna move. Like, we need a little bit. They're not even tight. It actually does move, which is good. See now, normally I would wedge something here, but now with the paint I can't. Unless it's my plastic stick. Okay. That's better. So this gap now looks pretty good, but unfortunately here it still doesn't line up perfectly. Like, I don't know how that's possible, because everything was lining up. I'm sure it was. So this gap, as expected, became narrower there and wider here. So we're gonna do the same thing. We're gonna loosen the bolts on the fender. We're gonna push the front end in. Here we have those locating cones that we're gonna have to adjust so it goes a little bit lower. I hope it can go a little bit lower, and that end as well. All right, what I actually did, I loosened it one more time here, and I opened this gap just a little bit more, maybe a 16th. I think that's acceptable. Unfortunately, the rear gap is already pretty big as well. We can't move the whole door to close this a little bit, but I think what we can do is we can raise the door up, and by raising the door up, at least here at the top end, where it curves, this is gonna close. We have room here, and that's what I wanted from this door. I believe it can go a little bit higher. And here now, because we moved the fender a little bit more, now it is pretty close. Still there is a difference and I don't like it, but I think I can live with that. Here as well, it's a very little further forward, the bonnet, but I believe here we are good. Well, here the door has a huge gap in the back, so we have to play with that. The door needs to come out and it's going to open this gap, so we can't do much about this fender too, but I pushed it in as well, so now the gap is pretty even, and I think that's where we're going to leave the bonnet and the fenders for now. They might need to move a little bit again, but I think we should go and align the doors now and try to play with all the components at the same time to make it perfect. I know it can become perfect because it was perfect before I sent it for paint. So I'm gonna start with this door. The bottom end needs to go in and the whole door needs to go up. So to move it up, we can use both parts. This part of the hinge or this part of the hinge. But to move it in and out, we only can use this part, because that part of the hinge can go up, down, forward, backwards, but it cannot go in and out. This part can go in and out relative to the door. So we have to loosen these bolts and move the door this way while the hinge stays where it is, and that's gonna move the door a little bit further in. So let's do that first. Or should we try and loosen all 6 bolts and lift the door first up? Yeah, let's do that. Okay, I tried all kinds of special tools here, little ratchets and stuff, and finally it turns out that the stubby wrench works perfect. Okay, let's see if we're gonna be able to move it up now. Good thing this masking tape didn't pull up the paint. Nope, doesn't move up from here. So, okay, I'm gonna try to move it in then. That actually moved. So let's tighten it, and the rest of the adjustment is gonna be from the other side of the hinges. Okay, that looks good. So now it just needs to go up. Okay, that's pretty good now. The body line lines up here. The door doesn't stick out anymore. And here now we have just enough room when the door opens so it doesn't touch. Because this is usually the problem here, it touches. And holes is good. And here it looks okay as well. So that's where we're gonna leave it. I'm gonna tighten the hinge now. I only have 2 bolts tightened, but now I'm gonna tighten the other 4, and we're gonna do the same on the other side. So let's see what the situation here is. So obviously the door needs to be twisted like that, you see? The gap is small there, big here, and small there, big there. So by twisting it, it's gonna become perfect. Also, you can see the body line here. This one is lower than this, and here it's the opposite. This one is higher than this. So by twisting it, that's gonna come back to normal as well. So I'm not gonna hold you here. I'm gonna do it on my own with the inner part of the hinges, and we're gonna go from there. All right, this side actually turned out to be a little bit more complicated, but I was like halfway through already when I realized that I should have filmed this side. Anyway, it's done. So I ended up unbolting the whole fender too and moving it forward a little bit, just the same way I wedged my plastic stick and pushed it forward, which actually helped here, because if you remember, it was the bonnet was sticking further out than the fender. Here the fender can go a little bit further in still. This the hardware here is missing, so we can do that, no problem. But that helped aligning, making this gap a little bit bigger here. And at the bottom, I undid these 3 bolts here, and with my knee right here, I wedged my knee here, and I pushed the bottom end of the fender that way, and then I bolted them. And now this gap looks okay. This one is not perfect, but I can't do much about it. For whatever reason, this body line can go lower. Well, it is. Actually, now it is pretty good. But the gap becomes too small here at the top. Then it becomes wide here. And again, a little bit narrower down there. So that's how it is gonna be. I think it's pretty good situation of the door. So the other side is done, this side is done. The rear fenders, they don't need much. Oops, there's bird poop here. So they're missing some of the hardware, as you can see there and inside. So I'm gonna go around now and I'm gonna make sure that all the fenders and doors and everything is bolted with all the hardware. This, for example, needs to be pushed in. You see here, it needs to be pushed in. It's not bolted, so it needs to be pushed in, and there's a bolt under here somewhere that secures it. The front fenders have bolts inside there. It's gonna be easier to show you there. So there's a bolt going this way here, and there's 3 of them, I believe, in these holes. 1, 2, 3. So these need to be mounted. There's a bolt that goes here that needs to be installed too. All the bolts inside there to hold the fender. Like, I'm gonna make sure that they're there. I'm pretty sure most of them are there. but I'm not sure that all of them are there. Here, this lines up pretty well, so I'm pretty sure the bolts are there. But anyway, I'm gonna go and make sure that everything is bolted, and then we can say that the body is ready and we can start decorating it like a Christmas tree. Something I noticed as I was doing the door, I was looking at the overdrive. So this overdrive didn't come with the car. John purchased it separately, so if you've watched the recap video, you maybe noticed that we first installed the non-overdrive transmission, and then we switched it with overdrive. It's an A-type overdrive. But what I just noticed, because I saw those marks here, it says switch for the second and for the third and fourth, and then I realized, where is the reverse? So this transmission doesn't have a reverse switch. Looks like we're gonna have to take care of that as well, because normally the reverse switch should go here or here, because when you move the shifter this way, the bottom pin goes that way and moves that third shaft, which is for reverse. So we're gonna have to add that to the list. And this is why you don't leave masking tape sitting on your car for years, because now this is just the glue, so it's gonna be cleaned, no problem. But here it peeled the paint a little bit, so at least it's in a hidden spot. It's gonna need a touch up here, but yeah, that's why you don't leave it there. You have to remove it. All right, so that took a while, but all the fender mounting or wing mounting hardware is installed everywhere. So we have bolts everywhere here, bolts everywhere there. There's 3 bolts down there, over there. These hold the fender to the valance. So these are there on both sides. Here, this is what I was talking about. These bolts here and here in the back. And there's another one. So there's 3 on each side. These are mounted. These ones here. There's one here also that holds the fender. There's another one here that holds the bracket that holds the windshield frame, so that's gonna come later. This one is only for the fender. Then inside there, maybe this side I can show you better, so you can see, starting from here and all the way inside there, there's bolts, and then they continue here all the way and they go around. So here I took them out because I don't have enough of these. Turns out that I don't have enough. I don't know where they went, because I'm sure that they were even extra, because we took, well, these fenders weren't mounted with the proper hardware, but we bought fender mounting kits for all 4 fenders, and now it turns out that we have the little clips or the nuts for the back, but we don't have these. Anyway, so I took these 2 from here and I used them in different places because they were missing in some places. In some places even they dropped the nuts. Turns out that they took out the rear fenders after all, because if you can see here, that's probably the reason why they took them out, because they masked here and they painted. So anyway, when they were putting them back on, in some places they dropped those little what are they called, speed nuts. So I had to reach from underneath and get them. Here also you see these 3 bolts are holding the fender. This is the same down there as on the front valance. There's these 3 bolts. And anyway, it took a while, but everything is now mounted. So I'm happy to report that the exterior, all the panels, should be good now. All right, sorry, the heater is on and my wireless mic has a dead battery, so I'm gonna have to rely on my camera. So I'm gonna yell a little bit. So with that, our exterior panels are mounted. This can still go down a little, but we're gonna adjust that when we have the bonnet latch here, because now we don't have a latch. So I think with the latch it's gonna go a little bit lower, and we will see here with the cones and everything, might need to go down. But other than that, I believe everything looks great. We still have to install those mounting brackets here for the fenders, you know, from the frame to this hole here, for the bumper, I guess, and the ones in the front here, for the front that end up here. But we're gonna do those at some other time. I mean, all I wanted was to align the panels, to align the fenders, doors and everything, make sure that the gaps are good, so we can continue with the interior now. But where do I start? Well, I'll tell you where. You think about the places that are easily accessible right now, and they're not going to be accessible later. And what I'm talking about is under the dash. So no matter how counterintuitive that sounds, but we start with the windshield wipers. Because the wheel boxes here underneath are really, really hard to access when you have stuff under the dash. But right now, if you look up there, right here, these are the covers for the wheel boxes. There's one there and one there. Now we can access those pretty easy. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna find all the parts that belong to the windshield wipers. Here we didn't even take the wheel boxes out, but we need to make sure that they work properly, so we don't need to service them later. So if everything works okay, we're not even gonna take them out. We're gonna find the windshield wiper motor. We're gonna put it here and see if everything operates as it should. We should find the plastic cones or whatever they're called that come here on top, put those and see if everything works. If that works well and we're done with it, the next thing should be the wiring harness, because it goes above or behind the blower motor that goes right there. So we should put the wiring harness first, run it to the places where we know it needs to go, and then we're going to start with the blower motor, and then eventually we're going to take care of this dash. We're going to see, I don't remember if we painted it or what the condition is. I think it's painted, it's just dirty. So we're going to install the metal dash and we're going to start from there. Also the pedal box that goes underneath, the master cylinders, etc., etc. But first thing first, let's find all the parts that belong to the windshield wipers. So here underneath we have a few boxes of parts that I went through, and I believe that these are the parts that we can start with, but I also have a few more boxes in my storage room that also contain parts for the car, so maybe some of the parts are still there. We're gonna see. And the owner, John, also has some parts in his place, so hopefully the parts that we need are here and not in John's place. So let me start digging through these boxes and we're gonna go from there. All right, so this is what we have. I tried to separate everything by compartment, you know what I mean? So this is all dash here. These are all electrical. We have multiple fuse boxes. We have lots of relays and stuff. We have a brand new relay. I believe this came with the overdrive, because the overdrive came with a new switch and new escutcheons. I don't know where it went. This is the one for the overdrive switch. But we have parts from more than one car here, because John used to have another TR6, but for one reason or another that car turned into parts, so now he has more than one car here. and I'm pretty sure that car was 73 or later, because this is a switch, like wiper switch, that is for a later model. The 70 should be using these types of switches for the windshield wipers and for the washer bottle, for the windshield washer fluid. So anyways, we have lots of parts. We have brand new harnesses for the overdrive that came with the overdrive, cable, speedometer or tachometer, I don't know. Here we have lots of hardware. Unfortunately, I don't see my boxes. I had little boxes with hardware that was divided by dash, by, I don't know, maybe they're still in some of the other boxes, in some of the other containers, but I believe I went through all the containers that I have in the storage and I couldn't find any more hardware. So unfortunately, I didn't find the windshield wiper cones and the nuts for the top. So I don't know what we're gonna do. Anyway, what else do we have here? The pedal, the throttle pedal, but I didn't find the fork at the end, and we can't install it without that fork. What else here? Some more switches, but these are aftermarket. I don't know if they were on the car or came from something else. Here some of the engine compartment. So this is a fan, electrical cooling fan that John purchased separately that we're going to install. Here's the mounting kit. Here's the electrical part of that switch. Electronic ignition. Of course, we're going to need right away the blower right after we install the wiring harness, which is in that box over there. Here underneath we have a plinth with all the cables. Somewhere I saw new knobs and some gaskets here, all the hoses for the vents under the dash and some of the dash pads, even though this has the dash pads already, but like I said, he had more than one car taken apart, so we have some extra parts. Here, these parts we're gonna need right after we are done with the dash, I believe. So master cylinder and the pedal box, etc., etc. Here, this is what I was talking about. We have lots of these little nuts, but we don't have any more of the screws. I don't know how come, but whatever. We're gonna find two to add to the trunk where we missed them. And here, this is a box with some new parts that I believe John ordered after he picked up the car from us, because we were ordering from Moss and I don't remember ordering these parts, so I think he ordered these. These are new bullet mirrors and bulb kit, lots of hardware, which is good. Oh, there you go, we have some of these here. Fantastic. Lots of hardware, which is good. These are rebuilding kits for master cylinders. I believe one is for the clutch, one is for the brake, which is good. And this is some kit for mounting something. TR6 hardware kit, seat sliders. Okay, so that's for the seats. Good. The pedal pads and stuff like that. So, and that's from 2021. So John ordered it after he picked up the car, because yeah, he picked up the car way before COVID. So anyway, what else was I gonna say? Oh, this is something that is really good that he has. This is a grommet kit, and as far as I can see here, it's divided in 3 groups: engine bay, passenger compartment, and boot. So that's great. We're gonna use those. The windshield wiper motors, it has 2 motors, so one is from the newer car, one is from the older car, obviously. So we're gonna see which one is from this car. We're gonna match the plug, because the plug is different. So we're gonna see what plug is on the harness, and we're gonna see which one I had the feeling that the wiper motor was painted. I think John himself cleaned it and painted it, so there's a slight possibility that there's a third one somewhere, but it's not here for sure. I checked the other boxes. But yeah, we have lots of parts to start with, and I already started a list with parts that we gonna have to purchase probably, because one is those cones, the plastic cones that go on top of the windshield wipers right here. And the other one is the antenna. I just realized that we're gonna need an antenna and install it here before we assemble the whole dash, because after that it's gonna be very tricky here. You don't have any access here because of glove box and all that. So antenna we're gonna need to purchase and install right away. So I'm not sure how long this video is gonna be, but I think I'm gonna end it here so I can show you that we actually are working on the car already. It's not just sitting here, it sat for a long time. Unfortunately, I had to finish some other project before I start on it, so it is more than a month, I think. It sat outside in a trailer for a while, and then I brought it in and it sat in the corner here for a while, but now we are starting and we're gonna be focusing. That's gonna be our main project. I'm also rebuilding a TR6 engine, but I'm not filming it. So anyways, that's gonna be it for today, guys. Stay tuned for the next video in which we're gonna start assembling under the dash and all that. So thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you soon. Bye.